Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. So as I incubate up some more, I think, sort of eclectic episodes, I thought we'd just do an episode that's a little bit more generic, with the goal of sort of sparking our mind for the next few years, especially the next 12 months, just to kind of look at our future, which is obviously going to mandate that we look at our present and that we also remember the past. So I smoke probably the last Herrera still I'm going to smoke in a while. It's interesting, in my own life, being on this planet for 5 decades, about 4.3 I can remember. You grow up and you just sort of think this is the way the world is, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're trying to catch up with the world. You're trying to catch up with your personal goals, which you can personally achieve, which is what you have to do. And then there's this moment where you eclipse your career, meaning you're ahead of the game. You got perhaps more options than one. And then you have a lot of that situation where you get into your family, you found someone you can spend the rest of your life with, at least currently. Hopefully forever. And then you start to kind of, look around. You're up on the vista. You're up on that high peak. And you can get strategic with your life. Depending on how much you get out there with your career, you will bump into the system. You bump into the system fairly quick, but a lot of it you can rationalize, which is to say, well, I can't get lodging for free. I can't just get money because I exist. Universal income, I did a whole episode on it. It has some valid points, but it's never meant to completely support you. It's meant to keep you out of a ditch. But of course, scammers will come along and screw up everything, right? But let's just push all that ancillary, corrupt human being thing out of the puzzle, and let's just go with us trying to be good people, one to ourselves, to each other, to our family and friends, etc., to the world. The first thing you'll really discover is taxation. And taxation comes in 2 different forms. Blatant tax that calls itself a tax, and then fees collected by your government that are still taxes for things that really are, especially in this digital age, of no labor consequence to any institution anywhere in the world, because it all happens automatically. Banks charging service fees is a joke. Everything's automated, They get to print 9 times the money that they have in their bank account, over and above what they already have, right? So they have $1, they can loan out 9. So they don't need our help paying for their buildings, paying for their, whatever, computer development, software development. They don't need us. They make money hand over fist. They could technically borrow it from the government, loan it to each other. There's all kinds of ways they can take care of it, so we don't need to feel sorry for them. But so this occurs. You wake up and you run into all these obstacles. And then you're like, all right. You might say to yourself, well, all I need to do is find out the truth about how everything works, and then I will get to my understanding and my ability to deal with it up to an expert level. And then I will be the best at whatever it is. And maybe, for instance, one of the examples might be learning how the stock market works and thinking you can beat the system. Now, there are some long plays you can do, and there's some short plays you can do. But what you need to understand is that the businesses that run the stock market, they live in 100% certainty. They have insider trading on everything. And so they never fail. They make you feel like it's a legitimate system. They make you feel like if Warren Buffett never loses a dime on average, right? He might lose a dime on a day in the year, but always look at his end of year summary. Dude's always making money. It's because he knows everything about what he's investing in. So what does that represent to us? What that represents to us is that we can't get the truth. And it's interesting how we have all these institutions that are built up with television shows, movies, word of mouth, school. And you find out later, oh my God, all the news in the world is full-on propaganda fake. And you're like, damn, what the hell am I going to do about this? Or, the first thing I think we do is we panic because we believe that we need to know the murder count in Uganda today. We don't. They do. We don't. If there's some, dictator that's risen up and he's mowing down everyone in Africa, like some Adolf Hitler kind of character, yeah, that should probably hit the news and we should all worry about it. But that's why we have government, intelligence agencies, military. That's what they're supposed to do. That is their job, is to protect us, to serve us and protect us. But even me just telling you that a government official's daily mantra in their brain is to serve and protect, they might start off that way, but they don't end up that way, do they? Because in the end, what we want as a primitive symbol to our life is control. We want to control our world. We may not even be greedy, but we might seem greedy to each other if we're having a hard time getting what we want or /need. I used to always tell my friends, I said, look, man, you could have the nicest person on planet Earth, the nicest guy, the nicest girl. They have never said a dirty word. They've never rumored anything, gossiped anything. They just live within their means. They're a wonderful, sweet person. But just like the movie Trading Places illustrated in a fictional sense, if you went up to them and just cupped your mouth over their nose and their mouth, and they can't take the next breath, you will find out what they have inside them. Because they should fight you tooth and nail to take the next breath and live to the next moment. And then someone in our culture will walk up and say, man, you were really rude about how you asked for that next breath. I mean, you kicked that guy, you scratched at him, you started poking him in the eyes. How dare you? And the person's, whoa, what world did I just wake up inside of, right? We know, without knowing even the mass details of it, we have accepted so many control apparatus around us. It is unbelievable. Some people might make an argument it's for the greater good. Someone just posted, I think, on our locked Facebook page for Deep Thoughts Radio. Just go to deepthoughtsradio.com and click on the Facebook link on our social media. It was Jacob Rothschild, who, again, we think died in May of 2018. We haven't seen him since, and he was doing lots of television appearances around the time he disappeared. Same with George Soros, having potentially died in October of last year, 2018. But the meme is all about his family taking over the world and controlling everything with monopoly money. Very specifically said monopoly money. And what's beautiful about monopoly money, for the layman especially, is to say, wait, what do you mean monopoly money? Well, I'll say, well, if I said, remember the game we played last week? Yeah. Remember how I loaned you $500? Yeah. Well, I want the $500 back. And this person's like, what are you talking about? That's a board game, man. By Hasbro. Yeah, well, whatever. That person doesn't believe that fake piece of paper has any value whatsoever. It's not an expression of calorie energy of someone's hard labor or mind labor equaling any value. But by the 1770s, the Rothschild family had taken hundreds of years of playing with a fiat representation, meaning a fake representation of a real object called gold. And they said the law of averages, people don't want to be carrying this stuff around because they could be robbed. Their whole life savings can go away from one burglary. So they stored it in vaults, and they took out paper notes against the gold. And then we realized that no one really comes to get this stuff ever. Even though this guy's giving another dude a $100 note against $100 worth of gold, that dude doesn't want to actually come get the gold instantaneously. So on average, only a tenth of the people in the world come to get the gold, and 90% of them don't. So we create fractional reserve banking, where you can manufacture 9 units of money based on 1 unit of possession. Isn't that amazing? And then it just goes generation after generation after generation, because no one ever challenges these individuals, because for the most part we haven't awakened to these systems of control. Eventually, the paper was still tied to gold for quite a while. I believe an ounce of gold in the 30s, 1934, was about $35. Now I think it's about $1,400 or something today. It's gone up to $1,700 in my lifetime by 10, 11 years ago. So they had a bit of a problem on their hand because it was still fixed, right? Nixon took us off the gold standard in the 70s. I believe it was 73 or so. But prior to that, they wanted to obviously attach it to something that had supply and demand roots. But they also wanted to create a set of laws that are international to make sure that if we're going to do this, we have to really protect it. Because there's going to be scams out there if you attach it to Pez candy. Well, the Pez factories have to be absolutely monitored. They can't create too much Pez, right? But of course, it was attached to a barrel of oil, a non-fossil fuel substance that the world creates naturally. There's no scarcity of it. There might be scarcity at a particular well when you over pump it. It's going to take a little while for Earth to fill up the hole again, but it always will. It will always fill up the underground reserves because it is what the world creates. Okay. Well, again, I don't know. I wasn't alive in the early 60s when I think the OPEC thing was finalized. Kissinger played a huge role in that, of course. Lots of people played a role in that. I don't know if the world was asked, hey, you guys want to do this? I don't know if the world voted on, or the United States voted on being taken off the gold standard in 73. I suppose they did. Don't remember. Wasn't old enough to remember. So there's this obvious paradigm struggle going on right now, which is, sadly, globalism against freedom. That's really how simple it is. Do you want to take all of these dysfunctional government agencies, of which if you go into these agencies and talk to the individuals who work in them, it's sort of like a given that they don't run that efficiently. And they won't lie to you. They're just like, yeah, we're doing our best. These are good people. My DMV folks are good folks. And DMVs are getting a little bit better in California, but still, the trophy lines of stuff that wouldn't normally take as long as it does. There's so many services that could be put online. It's crazy, and they're getting better with that. But we're a good 100 years away from the government figuring out how to operate efficiently. So it's not the right time to move into an all-government situation. But there's always that added extra element over the government, right? Because the government, by design, on a piece of paper, looks pretty controllable by the people. But we lost control a long time ago, didn't we? We've allowed our government to grow, all of them around the world, to grow to a level that we can't control them at all. It's not to serve the people. We serve them. Now, in defense of our forefathers and several other countries, well, it kind of works. It kind of doesn't work. Lobbyists that go in and used to pay everyone off. Trump went in there and said, lobbyists, you're gone. If you've served in this House or the Senate or anywhere in the government, you can't lobby for X number of years after you get out. A profound change to the structure of this country. And we're still, barely seeing the benefits of it because people are still senators, people are still House representatives. If that's still enacted, I mean, imagine the president that tries to remove that executive order. And, you turn on the news the next day, and whoever's president goes, the lobbyists are going to be allowed back into Washington. Wow. Are we going to be stupid and go, yay, this is great? Now, pharmaceutical companies can pay off senators to make more things vaccination-wise or other medical procedures mandatory. You always have to take chemo if you're diagnosed with cancer. And then diagnosing cancer could be any tiny sliver of an irregular cell. So you put this toxic stuff in your body, now you're just screwed. The value of our money has been a big problem for the last 20 years in America. In a very blatant way, this quantitative easing, which for those of you who don't know what that means, as we allowed government to get gigantic, they simply printed more money to pay off the bills. When Barack Obama, the unbelievable traitor to this country, man, I don't give a fuck what political party you're a part of, the Iran deal that he signed before he left office has to be one of the most evident acts of treason against this country, where we were paying in cash, $500 billion of American money. Comes out of your taxes, comes out of your Social Security, your future, your kids' future. And we had no line items in the contract that benefited the United States of America. That whole deal was to open up the markets to Europe, not to America, but Europe, who, in terms of like getting all the politicians in Europe together, they all deserve an ass beating, because what they've done is they've said, we'll always make America pay for it. The UN, America will pay most of the bill. NATO, America pays most of the bill. If we don't like a tyrant in the world, we're sending American children into these wars. Oh, we'll put 20,000 in. They'll put 250,000 of their guys in. Their death toll will eclipse how many soldiers we volunteered in the system at any point in time. This has been going on and on and on. Now, I don't believe for a second that any upstanding European citizen, this is Australia and England as well, would think that that's a good deal. Like, I don't think any citizen supports that at large, right? Look at what happened in Hong Kong just recently. We threw some support behind the Hong Kong protesters, and then when they got their way, they just had a giant rally. They're holding up Trump posters, they're holding up American flags, and just saying thank you back the other way. I mean, it's enough to make you cry, man, if you care about the world. It's like, holy crap, we're working together now globally to get rid of globalists, to get rid of communism. It's just one volley, and Paris is still throwing down. Are there provocateurs in these audiences? Oh, sure. I watched a video. I didn't know what I was going to be watching. Someone's been making like these compilations of, they're very graphic, but it's important as a man, in my opinion, that you watch these, because there's protests going on right now in Chile, obviously Paris and Hong Kong, and a few other places. It seems like there's some Russian locations, but I don't know what's going on over there. But they're showing you the price the protesters are paying to fight for freedom. And one of the most common injuries, the cops are supposed to fire the gas canisters up in the air or down on the ground immediately. So it's like immediately bounces off the ground and then slides into the people. But instead of doing that, they're actually taking aim at people's heads. So one of the most horrific injuries that's happening, it's lethal almost instantaneously, is these things are shot so hard that they will get embedded in someone's skull, and they're still firing off the gas. So the person's dead almost instantaneously. But they're doing that because they know if they don't, they're going to lose Hong Kong. They're going to lose the whole paradigm of freedom. And believe me, they know it's just the first wave. Believe me, China, mainland China, is going to be analyzing every technique that they used. So when they come back for round 2, these kids are going to have to think up something new. But I tell you what, these kids are absolutely brilliant in Hong Kong. I'm telling you, man. Yeah, I won't be traveling to China anytime soon, if ever. But I watched this video. The riots are over. Wherever this video was being taken, there are no police anywhere. And this kid was picking up some of the debris. He could have easily walked off and just left it for some street cleaner to clean up. But he was just trying to move some stuff around. And out of thin air, this white guy comes up. Absolutely. I don't know where this dude's from. I don't know if he's hired by the government. I don't know where he came from. Because he couldn't have possibly disliked this kid if he's part of the rioting group. And slams him in the head with a metal bar. I mean, this was like a 2x2 piece of steel. And you hear the steel go Kong. And it hit him in the side of the head, his left part of his skull. And this poor kid was knocked out instantaneously. And you saw the guy who hits the dude. It's at nighttime. And he pulls back his hands like, oh my God, I just killed a guy. I pray to God this kid survived. But I don't think he did. And it's like, that's 2019, people. You think this stuff would never happen in your backyard? Now, George Soros has been trying to get a riot going in Europe. George Soros was trying to get a riot going in the United States of America by exacerbating race wars, gender wars, everything. And what's really crazy about the whole algorithm of the protesters today is that they're obviously capable of finding folks that are very uneducated. I don't even know if you would use the stupid word. I think you just got to use the ignorant word. But if you remember the busload of Mormons that were at some monument in Washington, can't remember exactly which one it was, and they're waiting for the bus, and it's not showing up. And this Native American guy comes up, and he's a provocateur. He is a loser, if there ever was one. He has lied about being in Vietnam. He never deployed overseas. He's a refrigerator mechanic. A second that the guy that busts all the false valor folks nails the dude, reads his record out loud. YouTube canceled his channel because you got to protect the guy that's telling you a lie and persecute the guy that's telling the truth. But if you watch all the footage from that day, which was then squashed out, you have these black guys that showed up. And it's a very interesting chronological thing, which is why the Native American guy got in there, supposedly. These guys are throwing down. They are talking about exterminating the white race. You know, I mean, if by any stretch of imagination, that's a terrorist act being, communicated. I am going to kill all of you, right? The Anti-Semitic League needs to protect all holocausts around the world, all genocide acts and provocateurs around the world. They need to be identified and placed in prison. I mean, they do. Hey, you just threatened a whole bunch of people. So what if you go into work and you tell your boss you're going to kill them? Don't you go to jail? Sure. Okay, so I know it's outrageous that someone would ever say that they're going to kill the whole race, but that's what they were doing. But now here's what's interesting. Had any of those black guys who were there said, okay, we're going to do a two-step process. We're going to try to talk to some white people today at this monument, and then we're going to talk to those Mormon kids. We're going to just mingle and talk to them and see if we are accepted. And if we're totally rejected, not everybody wants to talk to you, so you got to have a little margin of something. Then we'll go get our signs, we'll get our duffel bags and open them up and bring out all this "we hate you" signs. But that never happens, right? You just have this prejudice inserted in your mind by someone, some group, some individual, and then they carry that straight to the protest. There's no, hey, do we really want the same thing? Maybe we disagree about how it's actually going to occur. But if we start talking, then we can really get on the same page about how not on the same page we are. And most of it's all fake, isn't it? I don't know too many people in the South that aren't fans of every sport on planet Earth. Okay, maybe not soccer/football, but definitely American football, definitely baseball, basketball, maybe a little hockey in the South, probably not too much, but they worship these teams and they worship the players. Well, where are the players from? They're from all over the world. We've had, nearly 8-foot Chinese guys. Well, if he's on your team, you're really happy that 8-foot Chinese guy's on your team. We have several 7 to 8 foot tall black guys. I mean, 8 foot's usually reserved for a few, but we have that, was it the Bowl guy? Munit Bowl? I can't remember his name. I'm not a sports dude. But the big African guy who was much older than anyone thought. Okay. People love these people. White people love these people from all over the country. And it's through sports that they actually are so happy that the race that they're accused of hating caught the ball, threw the ball, dunked the ball, kicked the ball. I mean, whatever it is, right? But then on one flip side, alternate reality, the George Soros group of folks, all of a sudden we're all racist now. Now, I did an episode on cultural racism, which I'm fairly proud of, which really gives racism a dimension, Does everyone like everyone else in the entire world? No. Do you like your own race? Totally. Hell no. Hell no, you don't. But you don't dislike your own race because of your own race. You dislike your own race because you don't like the way a different group of your race lives and behaves, talks, thinks. But you don't think about it in a racism thing. But if you happen to carry that same algorithm over to someone who just happens to not have the same pigmentation in their skin, same hair color, eye color, whatever, native language, all of a sudden now we can't disagree anymore. We're not allowed to by the politically correct, by the globalists. It's tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. It's like, well, there's areas for tolerance for sure. People hating people for stupid reasons like their skin color. Well, that's ridiculous. But most of our issues have to do with behavior. Someone behaves different than another person. And what's really interesting is you will have, I'm just going to use white people as an example here. You will have a white guy try to date a white girl. His family isn't so upstanding. His family isn't respected by the other family. Perhaps they're not rich enough. Perhaps he's the rich kid. And his family's been known for being a little snooty. Or they're just perceived as snooty and they haven't been snooty. Who knows what it is, right? It's the whole Romeo and Juliet algorithm, right? Okay. I've seen this happen in the Midwest. The parents, one set of parents is against the marriage. Now, more often than not, it is in fact, one of my aunts had this situation. My family is utterly respectable. I mean, great track record for every human being going back as far as we can record it. But she ended up falling in love with a guy who didn't give a crap about money. Didn't hate it, but he didn't, he wasn't like, this defines me or something. And he marries her. But secretly behind closed doors in his family, they didn't like her because she wasn't rich. And I mean, like, their family's probably, I think, at least lower upper class, which means new money within like 100 years. But they had their own plaid in Scotland, okay? So they may be middle, upper class, definitely not upper class, but they were snooty as shit. When I went to the wedding, and then we all dressed down because we're about to drive home, and I went in to say, goodbye to my relatives who I wasn't going to see for a few months. And some dude who's part of my uncle's entourage, he would have kicked this guy's ass had he known this happened. But one of his like snooty, biffy, fucking asshole friends sent the waiter over to me. I'm literally like 20 feet in the front door. I am most obviously not here to stay. I'm hugging and saying goodbye. I don't know what I had on, but he sends the waiter over and he says, that guy right there who's looking at me now, says, you can't be in here with those clothes on. And so I just looked at him, hoping he could read my lips. And I said, I want you to go tell that guy to go fuck himself. And then I left, But it was that's white against white, man. So it's not pigmentation for most people. It's behavior, and we have cultural things that we do. It really doesn't have to do anything with your skin color. It's where you live in the world that you behave a particular way. All right. I didn't mean to turn this into some racist, anti-racism episode, but that's one thing that's being impressed upon us in the current day that needs to be resolved and understood so we can live a better future. Now, I have a very close friend of mine, and her and I absolutely love each other to death as friends. And we know that we completely disagree about things. She's a climate change person. I'm not, Our scientific theories about how things work in the world are still very different, but she's very open-minded, and so am I. We sit right on this patio and we crank out a couple cigars together. She's awesome. And what's fun about it is that no matter how much we argue, we don't really argue. We just, differ in our conversation. She has this beautiful smile. And, we hug each other when we see each other. We probably sit out here no less than 3 to 5 hours. We go inside if it gets a little cold, but when she leaves, I give her a big hug. She hops in her car and takes off. And then we chat the whole time. We text chat the whole time because she's working on a film of her own. And what she has said beautifully, because she's an extremely brilliant person, she just said, I love talking to you because even though we're different, we really do want the same things in the world. And I tell you what, I prophesied this, my own experience, the several years leading up to meeting her on this particular show. And I've always told you guys that education is everything. Now, we might differ about what education gets emphasized over another, but her and I both know that we always kind of come to that same pinnacle moment where it's like ignorance is killing the planet. And I'm not quite sure that socially speaking, we have been this ignorant for several hundred years. Now, I'll give you an example. And again, I don't know European history well enough to give you any examples over there other than Magna Carta. Actually, I'll throw in Magna Carta after this example. We know America fought a Revolutionary War. If you consider the start of that war from Lexington Bridge shot to Hamilton giving up to the bankers in 1812 and turning back on the first equivalent of the Federal Reserve, which is not federal, it's a private for-profit bank, it's about a 27-year war. But the people of this country understood the tyranny of Europe that had been allowed to manifest after Magna Carta, which is the foundation of the Constitution of the United States, and they were willing to take up arms for almost 3 generations to fight off these redcoats coming over and everyone else coming over trying to press upon us. Now, again, we got a shitty president, Hamilton. Fuck that guy for life. He gave it all back up again. And then it took Jackson to really pull up, put on the big boy pants and defeat them once again. And then Lincoln did it again. But Lincoln got shot in the head. Magna Carta is like 1000 AD, man. I don't know if you knew that. I got a great episode on it. Go look it up. Just look up Carta, C-A-R-T-E, on the website, deepthoughtsradio.com, and you'll find it. It's a real important piece of history you should know. Because as soon as they created Magna Carta in the past, this is a nice Christmas past conversation, the king started up some taxes, started up some oppression on the people. And when they said, hey, and it was outside the confines of what Magna Carta was trying to protect everyone against. And he says, well, if you relax this one thing in your Magna Carta, I'll pull the taxes back. Okay, little tiny, blot out of the Magna Carta until the whole thing was blacked out, and then we went into massive tyranny, right? You have Magna Carta at 1000 AD, and then you have by the 1500s, everyone in Europe is in hell because they've allowed kings and queens to run the joint. Now, the French did some pretty cool shit against that. Don't know how we would judge the situation afterwards. But a lot of time it's just live by example. America freed the entire world. Not by going over and defeating every monarch and every banker, but by showing you what it could be like if you didn't let them have control. Now, we lost it as of 1913 with the 16th Amendment. We've had little presidents here and there try to fight it, but they typically get bullets in their heads. Trump is the very first person to flip double birds at the globalists and still be alive. I mean, for people that keep telling me, oh man, he's a shill. Two things he says that piss me off is, take your vaccinations and 5G is great. Him saying we went to the moon, I get that one. He's got to toe the line until we can prove it. Chemtrails have not stopped, minus, irrespective of what the Q cult would like to say, they haven't stopped. So the old famous saying, if you don't know history, then you're bound to repeat it. Oh yeah. But now with education and us measuring our intelligence, what's really interesting about it is the game that we're playing today. And I've said this a couple times in episodes, but this is the whole subject in one linear thought, right? Because some kid can program a web page, because some kid knows about how to put a loud muffler on his shitty car because he's got penile issues, they think they're brilliant. But when it comes to social intelligence, they're flatlining, absolutely flatlining. Social media posts in general can tell you the average intelligence of a human being, their personal need to tell other people certain things. The girl that always posts the latest boyfriend, man, the second she gets in a relationship, bam, I'm in a relationship, boom, the profile is a double pic of this person because what she's telling the world is, look at me, I'm loved. Some guys do it, not too many. Guys are playing a whole nother game. The, hey, my life is better than yours post, right? Well, what could that possibly do to other people? But make them grow in their envy because they don't have the social intelligence to be happy for you. But still, throwing it out there all the time. I mean, you go to Hawaii or whatever, you see your whole life has been to see the Eiffel Tower and you end up doing it. Hell yeah, I'll post that shit. But that's how many times are you going to do that in your whole lifetime? Maybe if you traveled out once a year, your friends could know, she's going to go to somewhere in August. I can't wait. I can't wait to see her latest photo album or his photo album or their photo album. But when it's every other day, look at me, I'm at a party. Look at me, I'm loved, right? It's something that, what's funny is about the time the internet really got social media, I would say, in my own personal travels, and I'm sure this happened, for hundreds of years before I experienced it. But you do get to that point where people ask you what you're doing with your life. If they just told you they're getting a divorce, they got cancer, whatever, or they're struggling in any way, shape, or form, the last thing you're going to say when they say, well, how's your life? Is, oh man, I have clean bill of health. I just got married. This is so amazing, better than anyone I've ever dated. I mean, my God, you wouldn't say that because you're going to be hurting their feelings. Social media don't give a fuck, does it? It's like, oh, you got an open wound? Okay. Where's some salt in that thing? My social media is very locked down, and I don't post anything on Facebook, really. On the Deep Thoughts page is where I post anything. And if I didn't have a Deep Thoughts page, I would shut down every single social media thing I have. Maybe keep Instagram because it doesn't have that much in the way of dialogue. It's just me posting, what I think are artistic photographs of things. And I lock that tight. No one can see it on Instagram. You got to ask me to join. Most of the time I don't let you join because I'm not there to do that, The century of the 21st century is going to be riddled with some issues. And what I find very interesting is to compare it to the previous century, the 20th century. We cross over in 1900. America's doing okay. It's sort of, still in the Industrial Revolution for sure. We're getting new inventions. Ford's creating the car. We are making all kinds of, military vehicles, from ships. Eventually we did tanks. Eventually we did planes, all that kind of stuff. The 20s, what were they? They were the Roaring 20s. This is the 20s where we were actually robbing, the European banking cartel was robbing everyone who escaped to America with their money, with toxic loans. So it was not the Roaring 20s in the sense of true impact on people's lives. It was that we were high on crazy toxic loans, and that was bad. 29, they deliberately crashed the economy. And then what do we have for the 30s? A depression. Massive depression. As I've said to you guys many times, my grandmother, my father's side, she was scarred for life. She's a very positive, wonderful woman, but boy, you couldn't probably finish a week eating lunch with her every day or dinner without her mentioning something about how we're managing our lives and how we need to be conservative about spending money and all that kind of stuff, because she lived through a horrific stage. It is my hope that the algorithm of awakening and correction that is going on seemingly globally, that this is just the spark of people waking up. Now, let's talk about future predictions of what would need to occur, because in terms of predicting the future, eventually no one will own cars, that kind of stuff. Like, you see those magazines, they go interview a bunch of brilliant people about predictions, and man, sometimes they're really on target. Look at Arthur C. Clarke making predictions about the internet. I mean, the dude had it locked down, as creepy as that guy was. It appears that most people knew that Arthur C. Clarke was a pedophile. He moved to Sri Lanka, and the rumor was he did that so he could get away from American law and live on an estate and do whatever he wanted. Now, whether or not he was a brutal guy with it, I don't know. But, so people who work closely with him definitely came away with that impression. So you don't have to tell me all about him. But let's make some predictions. Can you imagine, let's say, because we want to pick a future date. I debate going to maybe 2050 versus 2100, because I think that would be a very interesting date. Maybe we do 2100, which should have a level of certainty with some of these concepts. Well, let me just ask you some questions. Let's put it this way. Can you imagine in the year 2100 that we still have a king or a queen that has any power of any kind? Now, they lie all the time about these people not having any power. Yeah, got a few bridges to sell you in New York if that's what you believe. But could you imagine them still existing with those titles 80 years from now? I can't. I mean, if society is going to be intelligent at 2100, I cannot imagine us allowing any form of monarchy to still exist. How is it that Hitler's bad, Mao Zedong's bad, Stalin's bad, but kings and queens should still exist? What is this based off of? The Lady of the Lake passing out swords? You can't you can't claim supreme executive power just because some moistened bent was handing out swords or gave you a sword. Monty Python, Quest for the Holy Grail. Michael Palin talking to Graham Chapman about how he became king. I didn't think we had a king. But what do they claim? They claim, just as Graham Chapman said in Quest for the Holy Grail, that he was made king by God's divine right. Boom, I have God's divine right as your king. Now, in the past, you may have had a few people that got really educated very quickly, and most other people are stacking mud like Michael Palin's character and Terry Jones, right? All right, so they pull us out of the shadows of caveman, brutality, which is, if you really think about it, we did have technically peasants with no skills whatsoever. Maybe they could get some water. We still didn't understand the way that, bacterial viruses or plagues spread in rats and things. So we were still dialed back, but you still have Egypt at probably a totally euphoric state thousands and thousands of years before Europe was all of a sudden dialed back to a feral state. So as we have seen this repeat itself, we don't want to go through another repetition of everybody being repressed again and losing all their education and losing all their capabilities to rule themselves. Will we have a paper currency in 2100? Ask a Bitcoin person who has benefited from a digital currency with a fixed amount of money. I would say probably not. But it ain't going to be Bitcoin. And the reason it's not going to be Bitcoin is that the one flaw of all virtual currencies as of right now is that you could have a wallet, a digital wallet with some money in it, and the only way you're accessing that digital wallet is through your cell phone, and you drop your cell phone in a pool and you've lost $100 million. And if you think that sounds crazy, experts that I know, I think the number I've heard is that if you were to total up all the lost currency that will never be retrieved because of the way it works, there's like 22 million Bitcoins, I think, something like that, that will never be recovered. Ever. Doesn't sound like a good way to run things, right? You would need some central repository for your wallet keys, whether it's protected heavily, but you don't keep your wallet key on any local device unless it's just a duplicate. It's got to be like an internet DNS. Maybe it's a bio identification system. Maybe it's 50 different things you got to do to get your wallet out of the vault if you happen to lose your cell phone in a pool. But there's going to be, and there's going to have to be, a way to get your money back so we don't lose the currency forever. We could even have the system say, we know that this particular wallet, of which the identity is still protected, had $100 million in it, and no one has checked into this wallet for, say, 25 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it is. Some family member, someone who owns this thing, would have touched it if it was still active. Let's say a guy goes to prison with a bunch of that stuff. Well, they could actually, as part of going to prison, fill out a form to say, here's my digital wallet. It's going on hold for my sentence. And I do not wish to transfer it to anyone else. Now, if you die in prison, the state might simply say, well, we have the right to forfeit your wallet. The government doesn't get the chance to take the money, but they get to redistribute the money back to the people. These are unpurchased Bitcoins or something. I think technically they're all purchased at this point. But plus, I think that one of the other reasons it's going to kill Bitcoin, and you may be able to buy the new thing with Bitcoin, is the fact that you actually have Sooners. If you remember the acquisition of Oklahoma, there was a moment in history where a bunch of people lined up on the border of Kansas, and they were told, tomorrow at this time, you're going to be able to go on your horseback or whatever you can do, and for all the land you can mark off with whatever the hell they were marking them off with, it's yours. Okay. Well, people went over the night before, snuck in, and they marked off a big giant territory and then claimed they went over at the right time, at the legal time. They were called Sooners because they went sooner than everyone else. Well, in my opinion, you can't start a virtual currency in some shack somewhere, tell all your friends, they get to buy all the currency, and then you get to farm it out and you become a billionaire overnight simply because you were on the inside. That's not the way to form a legitimate currency. But at some point, I think fiat currencies will be made non-fiat, again, backed by something. Could be by gold, could be by anything. Should be a rare thing. But it's there, and then you can divvy up ownership of that using a digital currency. So it's a gold-backed digital currency, limited in quantity with all those safeguards in place for people losing their wallets, and then we have it. Will globalism win? 2021, 2100, excuse me. I don't know. It's going to be a hell of a battle, won't it? It's going to be a hell of a battle to fight them back every single time that they attempt to take more control and take more control. My concern is that we are so ignorant on how the world works as a whole. Although we are getting more awakened every minute that passes, looking at Hong Kong, looking at Paris. I don't know what Chile is fighting down there. You never know with South America whether or not it's a coup by some intelligence agency somewhere else in the world or whether or not they're really fighting the bad guys. You know, it was funny, or I should say, kind of sort of silly, that Trump declared the cartels in Mexico a terrorist organization, didn't declare Antifa a terrorist organization, and then backed out of calling the cartels terrorist organization. He's going to hold off. Oh, really? Well, we got some homegrown ones. We don't need to worry about the ones in Mexico yet. Hey, anyone comes across the border and tries to cause shit, doesn't matter if you're a cartel member or not. You're going to suffer the slings and arrows of American law. That's the way it is currently. All right. Are we going to really invade Mexico and go after them? I doubt it. But there's a couple ways to view the next 80 years. We know that there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen. Okay, how do you get a cleanup to occur? Well, I think everyone needs to realize the place is dirty. And I'm not sure how dirty people think this place is. Is it 51%? I think it might be. I think everyone who throws a vote for Trump in 2020 considers this government corrupt to the core. And I think they want change to occur. So it's encouraging. But people die. Trump will most likely live quite a ways if he doesn't get assassinated by Pelosi and the gang. And so, I bet that guy gets into his 90s. I bet he does, which means he's got another 20 years to go. But he's not going to be president for any more than another 4 years. Okay. Can he affect things after that? I don't know. Are his kids going to run? I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet Donald Trump Jr. is going to run right after his dad, 2024. And I think that after his son goes either 1 or 2 terms, Ivanka's going to run. And, it'll be very interesting to see what happens to the Democratic Party after all this craziness that's going on. Because in the Clinton days, during his impeachment, and I'm not saying that what they got him for was anything that I would be terribly concerned about, getting a blowjob, who cares, right? It's just the image. The problem for him was he lied about it. He lied about not doing it. I had no sexual relations with that woman. What's the definition of is, he said. All right. Bad move on his part. But it'll be interesting in the next, year to 2 years where the opposition party is going to be. And let me make it clear from my perspective. I think that the most healthy brain in the world is a centralist, constitutionalist / if you're in Europe, a Magna Carta kind of person. You have mankind, all races, all genders, all orientations, what have you, inside your wheelhouse to do a do no harm policy. You could be a guy in the south of Mississippi, and when he sees a homosexual male or a transgender male or a bisexual male or whatever, he personally feels super uncomfortable with that lifestyle, whatever. I just heard it called a lifestyle on TV, which it really kind of surprised me. In the middle of this tolerance speech, that's usually supposedly a dirty word. But anyway, now he can hate it all he wants, but what he can't do and what he shouldn't do, and I think what most of them don't do, is go out and commit acts of violence against those people. It happens, but it's pretty rare. But, obviously one is too many, and so it gets thrown in the press like it's happening constantly all over the place. And I'm, technically speaking, it probably is happening constantly all over the place, but not in any massive majority, right? But according to leftist super extremists, you have everybody that's not like us constantly persecutes us, beats us up, kills us. That's their perspective of the problem in the extreme left, right? There's left people that are just normal. They're just a little more liberal. Then you have your extreme right, which would be the people that feed the extreme left. These are little tiny reservoirs of individuals that all need to go away, get educated, whatever the case might be. But once you find yourself directly in the center, you do have a policy almost immediately in your brain, a methodology of getting along with everyone else in the world, as long as they're on the same path that you're on, which is to do the same. But there are so many conversations we're not having when we're trying to contemplate our future. The one that I can't shake, that I mention quite a bit to friends, and boy, it doesn't matter how brilliant my friends might be, how old they are, this one always hits them like a ton of bricks, like they never considered this whatsoever, which is my age-old argument on this show, which is we have areas of the world that they're so far behind the curve of technology, not social issues. You got some cannibals, I'd say probably a little bit behind on the social curve, but these, we have tribes all over the world that are, one, they haven't made any contact with the outside world. Some of them have, but they still keep it the same. They don't wear t-shirts and shoes from our world. They make them themselves because they like their own traditions. But they're, it's hard to estimate. It could be as far back as 5,000 years, but it could be as far back as 50,000 years in technical evolution. Well, as the population increases, let's say we were to reduce a little bit of the rhetoric of being overpopulated because we barely have occupied Africa. America is still largely unpopulated. Europe is different. Europe's got a small plot of land and a lot of people, so everything's accounted for. I understand why Europeans might be afraid of their own growth, but every country in Europe is depopulating faster. It's almost as bad as like a Spanish flu just flying through Europe in terms of indigenous people procreating. It's so amazing that sophistication, and flying quotes, would cause you to depopulate your own country. What is it? France is disappearing off the map like a puddle of water in the middle of the desert. It's unbelievable. Meanwhile, Putin's handing out reproductive, credits. You have a kid, you get a credit. If you have the kid, you get money to stay at home, and you get tax breaks and all this other kind of stuff because he knows his population reduced considerably under the USSR communism rule. Okay. But we're not having that conversation about what do we do. We don't need to, we could do nothing and accept the way that these folks are different than us, or we could get a plan together to get them up. But education would have to be literally the first thing. Before technology technically gets introduced, the education has to go up. And then every form of education has a bias. Every form of education has implications that we have to watch out for. If you had a tribe, let's just make up two fictional tribes like Ace Ventura 2 that are against each other, and then you start educating the aggressor, and you at the same time you educate the one that's more complicit and just, they're not trying to start a war. Well, your aggressor might try to siphon out of all of your education anything that will give them the superior war-based advantage over the tribe they don't like. And the other one's just trying to learn how to write poetry and music and make food better or whatever, right? They're trying to make water out of like sunlight or whatever. And the other one's always trying to make a better weapon. So it's a tough problem. And I'm hoping that someone in the world is having this conversation, but I doubt it. And I was told, and I don't know if this is technically true, But I've told everyone who's in energy in my life this fact I learned, in a flying quote fact, which is that there's not a single nuclear power plant on the continent of Africa, the biggest continent in this country, or in this world, excuse me. And the insinuation when I heard this, and I can't exactly remember where the hell I heard this, but it was essentially, it was like a UN thing I was listening to. And they're basically saying, well, yeah, we don't want them to have energy because energy will cause a population explosion and it may just turn into full chaos down there. And meanwhile, Europe and the rest of the world is trying to rape all their resources, diamonds and gold and uranium and lithium and all this other stuff, right? So let's rape them first, and then we can give them, a light bulb that stays on 24 hours a day. It's crazy. I do believe, quite sincerely, that there are, pasty white guys out there that look at, an average black male, and they see this, warrior who's still hunting lions, man, with spears, and they're freaked out. They're like, there's no way I'm giving that guy our technology, because if he wants to kill me, he will, and he can. That's why I make machine guns and bombs and all this other stuff, so if they ever come after us, we're totally safe, right? Okay, well, I guess I understand a little self-preservation there, but that stuff's littered all over the planet in all kinds of different forms, right? And you hear all these arguments today about sustainability. This is the mechanism that Agenda 21 is using, because Agenda 21 is the deep state plan for 2100. They want to be 50, 60, 70 years deep into Agenda 21 with a massive world depopulation event occurring before 2100. I guarantee it. I'm willing to bet that they actually see that occurring before 2030. Because how do they get their way? How do they pass the first milestone of their finish line algorithm out of their plan without depopulating the world? You can't make any Agenda 21 map work without getting rid of 97% of this planet. Most likely a hell of a lot more, 99%. Okay, is anyone going to pay attention to that? Or are you going to post the latest thing you did to make someone jealous on Facebook? Like, where's the priorities here? Hey, you know that Agenda 21 is going to clean us all out tomorrow. Oh, yeah? Well, hey, help me plug in my 80-inch television, because that shit's real important right now. What's really interesting, when you get in a position of leadership within a company, whether it be your own company, or like when I was a kid, I always ran the group of kids that I hung out with. Just the way it happened, man. I was really assertive and always had a plan, and always kind of, I factored in what other people wanted to do. But it's interesting when you gain that trust from individuals. I never tried to ever use it for bad, and I don't think I ever have, but I suppose I could have. I could have been a Jim Jones, man. Everybody, I'm the Messiah, and let me tell you about Jesus handing over the reins to me, man. And then by the way, if those feds show up, get the Kool-Aid out, right? But it's interesting how, when I look at the drug proliferation in America, I have people try to talk about this, and it's funny how they don't seem to have the education, and it's all serendipitous for me up to a point. And then I had so many indicators. I went and researched the missing DNA. But we had, the mafia was running all the drug trade in America, which wasn't anything like it is today. I'm not trying to write them a blank check or anything, but then the Central Intelligence Agency started watching them in 49, concluded their studies 10 years later in 59, gave Bobby Kennedy a job under his brother to go after all the mobsters, to be the point man, so that everybody would say, oh, it's not us, it's him. All the intel came from that 10-year study. But the study was to take over this liquid cash situation, meaning the cash had no ledger of existing, but it existed. And so they could pay for all their clandestine, secret projects. And the first drug they dropped on the American people was LSD. Now, LSD was invented in the 30s, believe it or not. And again, if it's pure, it's totally harmless to you. Whether or not, if you have a really dark past, it's probably not good you take any, because it'll remove all those barriers you've been building up your whole life to keep all that nasty stuff in your past suppressed. But it could be literally what makes you liberated if you can get through your bad trip or whatever. But what did that do? You guys have heard me say this a couple times, but I'm going to make a point here in a second that's related to this. It made everyone love each other. It made everyone see God. It made everyone not fear death. It made war seem stupid. And here they are running this war in Vietnam, and the protesters were all out there. Then they realized they needed to absolutely assassinate the hippie movement. All right. There are 4 events that killed the hippie movement: the death of Janis Joplin, the death of Jimi Hendrix, the death of Jim Morrison, and the Manson situation. The Manson situation was the end of 1969, right? It was the beginning of the end of the hippie movement. After the Tate murders, and that guy, who wasn't even there, didn't kill anybody. I have friends that just were like, "Oh, no, he totally was responsible. This totally that." Hey, man, it's one thing for a guy to say, "Oh, look at Kathy Griffin." Is it Griffin or Griffith? Griffin. She holds up the severed head of Donald Trump. Really funny, awesome thing she did to her career. Fuck that lady for the rest of her life. Well, what if somebody made it occur within the week? They snuck into the White House, they snuck into Mar-a-Lago, wherever, and they're able to take out all Secret Service people, and they cut his head off and take a real picture with his head. Just literally standing in the same dress, standing whatever. It's exactly what Kathy did. Well, that's a Manson event then, because she premeditated the entire murder in a role-playing exercise, and someone else carried it out. Is she going to get life in prison for that? I bet not. I bet the people who actually cut his head off would have gotten the jail sentence, and she would have been shamed for the rest of her life, way worse than she has been able to get up to this stage. So, hippie movement's killed. It's now on a fizzle-out stage. Everyone who wants to stay in it moves to San Francisco. And then what happens? Studio 54 opens up in New York, and the new drug is cocaine, baby, because they had relocated a lot of other growing areas into South America. They found out they could grow it really well down there, and now it's coming in by the truckload. Any of you seen the cartel shows, the narco shows on Netflix, you know all about the cowboys, cocaine cowboys, and that lady who was a cocaine cowgirl, I guess you could say. But it costs too much for the peasant, meaning us, and so they roll it down to crack. Biden's kid still smokes crack. Obama smoked crack. Crack is like something I guess the elite just love or something. But now it blows up in the ghetto. Eazy-E makes a shit ton of money. Okay. Here comes the late 80s. What's next, man? What's the next thing on the block? At the same time, you've got angel dust, PCP, meth still hasn't quite hit yet. But heroin starts to become huge. Heroin's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Your opium dens and all that stuff. But it got to be really popular in the 90s, right? How many 90s lead singers have died of heroin overdoses? Quite a few. Now, in the 21st century, we have the explosion of methamphetamines. We make a show called Breaking Bad that glorifies the creation and sale of meth. Wow. The bad guy's the good guy, and the good guy's the bad guy. Awesome. Man, we're really making a lot of progress here, aren't we? Why mention that in this episode? Because look at how we behave like lemmings to these people, man. You want some drugs? Sure. Now, LSD, I kind of understand. It expanded your mind. I almost think it should be a mandated thing. Government created, so it's completely clean shit. And you psychologically evaluate a kid to see if he can take it, and then go, okay, here, meet God. Boom. But coke, heroin, speed, PCP, meth, what, are you kidding me? Blows out your T cells. All that stuff they call AIDS, well, a bunch of it's just straight up drug use, blowing out your T cells. We are way too complicit to this stuff. And the kids, because they're not getting educated by their parents, they're not even getting warned by their parents, they just immediately fall in place and take the drug. It's incredible. My buddy Dave, I went over and smoked a 1978 Partagas cigar, man. 42-year-old cigar. Mind-blowing, man. But he played 2 movies for me. One of them is to help me out with some stuff I'm already writing, but one was just one of his favorite films, which is Less Than Zero, which stars Robert Downey Jr. and a few actors that I don't remember because they were birthed and died in the 80s. But it's a real simple story of 3 best friends. And the guy and the girl are the most... there's 2 guys and 1 girl, but Robert Downey Jr. plays a guy who's essentially hooked on blow, cocaine. And what's funny, funny as an interesting about it is that this ended up being the life that Robert Downey Jr. struggled with in real life, except the drug of his choice was the heroin, because according to his story, someone slipped him the heroin within a cigarette. He saw the dragon and then tried to chase it for the rest of his life, and God bless every moment of his life after he rehabilitated, because he went in front of a judge and said, I'm done with this shit. I'm done. I'm done relapsing. I'm not going to go into this. And he is one of the most... He's literally the poster child of someone that did it. So, hats off to him. But in this movie, the fictional movie, the movie's almost 33 years old, so hopefully this isn't a giant spoiler for you, but his character fails to overcome. And he just dies in the car, coming back from Palm Springs back to his home in Malibu, and they're driving him, and they've rescued him from certain death, and he owes some guy $50,000, and his buddy's going to come up with the cash to settle the debt. And he just dies in the car. But it was the 80s, and my buddy Dave is slightly older than me, and he grew up here in Los Angeles, and he's like, this is exactly what LA was in the 80s. These super duper rich kids, and he lived down here with the rich kids. The movie shot in Malibu mainly. And he said, Coke was everywhere. And it was no big deal for everyone to have a little Coke on them and, sniff it all night long, get bloody noses and what have you. And so I'm watching this and I'm thinking, Jesus, man, I have never appreciated more in my life growing up in a tiny town in Kansas with 12,000 people at its peak, with all my relatives all in the same town, with that code of ethics, the chivalry towards each other, men and women. But the whole stigma of your last name dictates what you're allowed to do, because we don't do that. They do that. We don't. You had your honor. You had your thing. And so when I pull back from this whole, how's our future going to be? Well, the big cities create an environment that is toxic. And I'm not sure it's ever going to be anything but toxic. The reason why Robert Downey Jr. in this character he played, his name was, I can't remember his damn name in there. But he was able to hide. So his father was a super rich guy. His whole family was super duper rich. We're talking like mansion with a tennis court and all this. Every kid was super rich in this movie. But the reason why he was able to run off and do all these drugs and destroy his life and then get himself bailed out, get himself rehabilitated, then jump back in and do all of it again, rack up more debt, was he was in the big city where nobody knows your name, man. You can drive, like I've said several times, you could drive down LA traffic and you could pick out some poor soul who has no physical prowess. Perhaps they're an old person. Maybe just specifically give the example by an younger person harassing a younger person. They could flip you off, call you names. You could just walk up to someone in a supermarket and just be a complete jerk to them. And as long as you're not in the town that you live, there is zero chance, unless you break the law and the cops are coming after you, but there's zero chance you'll ever see this person again. So you can be this constant jerk. There's a lot of you, and we've all had this experience, where you leave your hometown and either you go to the big city that's near, which would happen to me, big city, which is not anything like LA, but you go on some field trip or something. Maybe you go overseas. You see this all the time at bars. Someone's from out of town. And for whatever reason, their perception of rules that make you a decent human being, that restrict your ability to be a jerk, they all go away once you leave your hometown. And you're just a jerk wherever you are. You're a little crazier, you're a little nuttier, because you're sort of feeling this liberation from everybody in your hometown that keeps you in check. And that's what the big city does to you. And Agenda 21's goal is to push everyone into big cities. Yeah, you'll be surveyed like crazy. Maybe that'll keep everybody in check, right? You're just totally videotaped like, THX 1138, man. Your house, every room in your house is like Big Brother. For those of you who went to school, K through 12, college or better, can you tell me that any class you ever took and any teacher that ever spoke ever truly sat the kids down and said, okay, we are, regardless of what class we're in, we're going to talk about what freedom is right now. The whole day, the whole 50 minutes we're going to have, it should happen in grade school, obviously, when you do sit with the same teacher all day long. But kids don't quite understand it. But you could make it so kids understand it. You could literally take a kid that as a teacher, of course, and you tell them ahead of time, I'm going to do a little experiment with you. So you tell the kid everything that's about to occur so they're not freaked out. Or maybe you don't, to make the point even more on point. But you get a kid and you go, we're going to talk about freedom today. Obviously, same-sex kid would be good with the teacher, but you grab them and you just hold them. And how do you feel? How do you feel about me holding you? And then you just keep holding them until they're like, okay, that's good. I need to get out of this situation, right? What's claustrophobia? Claustrophobia for me is almost a genetic addiction to freedom. Isn't that interesting? You get inside an elevator and people feel like the walls are closing in. Well, why are you feeling that way? You're feeling your freedom go away. Men weren't born in boxes. At no point did the genetic code of man say, and then man will create boxes and man will be stuck inside these boxes. We have freedom as a genetic code within us. And I tend to hope / think this comes from our soul, not just our indoctrination to want freedom. And the only time that I think that we give up freedom is in exchange for some sort of safety as a result of a problem, reaction, threat that's created for us. We, as Americans, walked away from at least 9 of the 10 Bill of Rights, which are the first sort of amendments that created, they're not amendments, but it's the first 10 if you will, commandments of the Constitution of the United States. After that, we added, amendments to it. Freedom of speech? Okay. Well, there's freedom of speech zones now. Gun rights? Well, geez. How many, you can't have a gun in Chicago? How is that even possible that we walked away from the Constitution at some zone in our country because a bunch of liberals ran the place? Anyone doing that, in my opinion, should just be immediately incarcerated. If any judge swings a gavel and violates the Constitution, it's not, oh no, we're going to raise that to the Supreme Court, then we're going to vote against you, and then we're going to repeal that law. No. The second you swing the gavel trying to circumvent the Constitution, you just signed your death warrant. Boom. They're going to put you on a boat. You're going to sit in some gravel with a black bag over your head and Gitmo until we cut your head off or whatever we're going to do. And for everyone else in the United States who's at that level of authority, well, You're next if you do it. Third Amendment is the one that we're kind of vacillating on. You don't have to house troops in your house. You can't just commandeer your home and put troops in your house. Now, in America, as long as they ask nicely, we'd probably help anyone in the military if they needed that kind of situation, because we probably have a bad situation. We'd want a lot of guns in our homes with expert training. But still, that one's pretty good. Fourth Amendment, eavesdropping. Oh my God. We know that was obliterated by 9/11. We know that before 9/11, they were eavesdropping on us constantly. Constantly. The phones, even Ma Bell, was put in place to hear conversations. We think a lot of times the technology is given to us because it's private enterprise and that's just the way it works. This thing was invented. No. Okay? They inserted themselves into your life so they could listen to what you were saying. You think television was just this private sector thing to entertain us at our house? Oh, maybe for about 5 minutes, and then it was, let's make it refresh at 60 frames a second, and tell them that we have to refresh at 60 frames a second, otherwise we don't see animation. When we go to the movie theaters and it's 24 frames a second, but 60 frames a second, they figured out, hypnotize the audience. Puts them into a low-frequency thought process, which advances suggestibility from what you're seeing off the TV. And then by the mid-50s, Project Mockingbird by the CIA, well, it's where you get Anderson Cooper. He's a Vanderbilt grandson, did his internship at the CIA, and now he's a freaking host on CNN. You guys have heard me say a lot of these things before, but now we're all in one conversation here. Do movies indoctrinate people? Oh, well, just ask anybody who's watching the new Star Wars movies come out. Hell yeah. Used to be movies were just great. They were just great because they were great. And the funny thing is, again, like I always say, between 75 and 85, movies were just fun. They were just great stories. Weren't a lot of agendas in them. They would have current affairs. They would have current thinking in them. You know, punk rockers got really hot in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, people would put them in the movie Repo Man to just show off some of the caricature interpretations of that movement. All right, it's still not telling you to be one. It's just saying, look, you know, this is what's in LA. London, boom. I'm not sure where entertainment's going to go by 2100. Are we still going to have venues where you go to see giant versions of movies? I tend to think so. I tend to think that when LED technology finally gets to a tiny submicron level, the screen will look like reality, and I mean reality. It will be in 3D, and it will be like just a hologram or a holodeck. It will probably even be able to project different angles, no matter where you are sitting in the theater. It's very tough to do, but, 80 years of innovation, I think we could pull it off. Depending on where the world is, that's either going to be a tool of indoctrination or it'll be simply a mechanism of entertainment. Televisions? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, will we get to the Black Mirror side of things where your eyeballs will be enhanced with screens that you have either permanently embedded on your eyeball or contact lenses you can wear? I can't imagine contact lenses would be the case. I do think a lot of the Black Mirror stuff is going to come true. I do. I think that we will have cameras potentially hooked to our eyeballs, and that storage will be no problem. So you will be able to record your entire life and walk back and look at it. That'd be really interesting for disputes between couples. You said that. No, you didn't. Yeah, I did. Okay, watch. We're going to run it back. Okay, see? Look, you said that. Here's what I think is very interesting. 2100 has three possibilities. Utter and complete depopulated tyranny, Agenda 21. The world population will probably go down to around 200 million. The whole planet. Or we pull our heads out of our asses, have these conversations I've been giving you 80 years before we need to figure them out, I guess, or we need to figure them out now, but before we need to have them fully implemented, And we'll talk about population control and how we can do that without pissing people off. We can get rid of dirty fuels and bad power sources and get into zero-point energy systems, etc., etc. And then we live in a manageable, truly sustainable world without cataclysmic, Orwellian, draconian death camps to make it happen. And then there's the third choice, which is more of the same. The war continues. It rages. One decade, it seems like the globalists are winning. Another decade, another Trump gets in there, and we seem like the people are winning. Who knows? Again, an idea is the most powerful thing we could possibly pass from one human being to another. Which is why, in my opinion, if we don't have these conversations that I advance on this show, and I want you to obviously filter it into your more accessible words, right? You will boil down something I say into a much simpler form. So you're an extremely vital component to the world being a happy place, because you're going to be able to access groups that I can't access, both physically and mentally. But if we can just pass out a re-education on tyranny, on the lunacy of kings and queens, on the lunacy of compound interest and usury, we might find ourselves in a wonderful world. If we could clean up this world in 80 years, would you think that's a long time or a flash in the pan? Now let's lighten the load a little bit of the serious tone of this episode and have a little bit of fun with what could derail some of this stuff in a very interesting way. Let's go for the first one. In the next 80 years, at some point, a UFO shows up on Earth and lands, and aliens come out. Well, what would that do to our plans? Well, perspective would change quite a bit, wouldn't it? Depending especially on where they're from. You know, there's the old idea of the alien invasion. Well, there's a bad alien invasion, and then there's this Vulcan landing, hey, how you doing? And let's just say it's going to be more of a, hey, how you doing? Because an alien invasion of like Edge of Tomorrow, that's just the full extermination of humanity. And believe me, if they wanted to do that, I'm pretty sure they could probably do that without even thinking twice. But they show up. We have all of our agendas, all of the things that we say is one way or the other. Now imagine the aliens show up and they go, what are you using to power your stuff? And we say coal, oil, gas, and then we have many ways of creating electricity with these other resources, wind and waves and water. And they go, okay. And they say to us, did you say that oil was a fossil fuel? What do you mean by that? Oh, and this liberal walks up and goes, oh my gosh, it's not only a fossil fuel, but it's in huge scarcity. There's this peak oil thing. It's about to occur, which will never occur in your lifetime, okay? And again, it'd be funny if they try to fake peak oil shutdowns, like, oh, there's no more oil in the whole world because we've mined it all, and then all of a sudden it starts bubbling up on the ground. It'd be hilarious to pull that little scam. The alien in some, I don't know, Joe Rogan show. Imagine a little gray with like his headphones on. And he says, it's not a fossil fuel. What made you think that? Here's the algorithm of how it works. And this is how the world creates it. All the Deep Thoughts listeners are like, yeah, we knew that already. He's like, what did you think was at the center of your world causing your compasses to go around? Nickel iron. There's no nickel iron in the center of your planet. It's all electricity. It's all plasma energy. It's mainly hollow, as a matter of fact. So is your sun. Oh my God. So an alien showing up would initially, most likely, if we could gain full access to several of them, it'd re-educate the entire world. All these scientists would be deemed nearly useless bags of water who have been lying to you and lying to you and lying to you, because once the aliens come out and say, this shit ain't fossil fuel, I've been telling everybody this is the case, but the professors in Oxford and Cambridge and MIT and Caltech have been lying to you forever. These institutions will go down the tubes overnight. But here's the magic question for them. For those of you old enough, the $64,000 question, which is, how do you run your world? And maybe they go, well, we don't have the stuff you call money. We just do what we know needs to be done, and we always have educational programs from the kids. For the moment our little hatchlings come out of the eggs, we start educating them. Like the krill, maybe they got a brain booster machine to shock the neural net and turn it on even deeper, so using 100% of your brain. We make sure our visual cortex completely works, so we get to see all there is to see in the universe. It took us a while to, adapt to it. We don't even talk. We use telepathy. Why waste all this calorie energy on your mouth? You think about it, you might have like really bad breath because they never open their mouth. And then all of a sudden, all of this party system that we have, this left versus right, Labor Party versus this party, all this other stuff just vanishes. Because it's the most complex way to run a country. What blows my mind is that we actually bought the two-party system. And I've gone back and forth on this show about what I believe about the two-party system. But in the end, if you really thought about it, it's pretty simple. Like Michael Collier used to say on Venice Beach, there's only one race, and that's the human race. So why do you need two parties? It's one party. These parties incubate up in our minds these opposition positions, these platforms that go, well, we have to be against the other guys. So what is the opposite of everything that they're saying? Well, it's this, but this doesn't make any sense. Nope, that's what we have to do. We have to go completely against what they say. Really? Yeah, man, it makes us a ton of money. Don't you want a ton of money? Oh, yeah, I guess. Sure. Sell out. Shill. Couldn't we just make the American government party the People's Party? There is no other party. It's not led by a dictator. It's not led by a king or a queen. It is simply to say, as a citizen of that party, as a servant within the government, can't stay forever. Maybe the most amount of years you can serve is 8 years. 2 presidential terms. Senate gets knocked from a 6-year term to a 4, and they get 2. The House gets 4 2s. You're out in 8 years. So you can't cause that much crap. And you can be kicked out at any point in time if you're caught doing this, and this. Talk to a lobbyist one time. Go to the wrong meeting behind closed doors. You violate the Logan Act. Boom. You're not only out, but you're in jail. Maybe not for life, but you're going to go away for a while. Got to make sure people follow those rules. What is the rule? Common law. Don't hurt anybody. And fortify the world to protect man. And education, honestly, should be as constant in your life, in my opinion, as you eating and drinking to stay alive. Maybe instead of, by 2100, what would the life be if we actually got this thing together? Well, you'd wake up. You have lodging. You have food. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you don't need that 40,000 square foot house for 2 people. Maybe that's just a thing of the past, like Downton Abbey. They showed the falling of the rich, which is the overwhelming arc of why the show was made in the first place. There won't be any rich people in the world. Oh, but there'll be kings and queens, and there'll be big bankers that still own gigantic estates. But for you, there'll never be a rich person again. But maybe, honestly, if we reprioritize our lives, well, everyone has a really nice virtual reality television. You can sit there and look at, again, submicron direct LED technology will be it'll be denser than the retina in your eyeball. It'll be denser than the screens in your telephones today. You'll have it. Food? What do you want? The machine makes it. Done. Water? It's clean. No fluoride, no poisons, no medicine. Good. Health? You're never sick. You're never, ever sick. So healthcare, no one ever catches cancer. No one ever catches the cold. No one catches anything. Oh, think we could do that in 80 years? I think we could. Your food and your water, maybe it's just full of the vitamins that the human body needs. No synthetics whatsoever, all natural. But maybe we pull our heads out and we start eating the foods that actually have all these things naturally in them. You know, I learned from that dude who's the anti-vegan online. If you were to drink an 8-ounce glass of orange juice, freshly squeezed, not concentrate crap, you will sustain that liquid in your body better than 3 glasses of water of the same size. Meaning 3 8-ounce glasses of water will pass through your system super fast. You'll pee it out before you can actually use the moisture for anything in your body. But if you eat it as a part of organic matter, it stays in your body a long time. Plus, it's passing all this vitamin C and nutrients in your body. If we can clean up our skies, well, geez, going outside would be easy. Every kid, every adult, part of your regimen is to read a book outside, maybe. And if you live in a real rainy part of the world, well, we'll turn on the tanning lamps so you can get some good vitamin D. If you happen to live in Alaska and you're in 6 months in the dark. But education, it's around you constantly. What do you do? What do you do today? Do you want to transition careers? Let's just say you're a plumber, but you sing while you plumb. And someone notices you got a good voice, or you at least have the budding mechanics of a good voice. You can sign up to join the class to learn how to sing. And the government, because you don't need money, says, yeah, sure, fine. You get this much time to go do this thing, you know? We'll pay for everything. It's good. Because the government serves you. I'm talking about a fantasy world, trust me. You don't need to worry about someone coming around your door to haul you off, right? Why do these kids, get stuck in their parents' basements? Because they can't find a job that pays enough money for them to have their own place. Because they get depressed. Because all the dreams that they ever had can't come true. And no one's there to help, right? There's plenty of guys out there that are 5'1", and they'll never ever be any taller than 5'1". But they wanted to be a linebacker for a football team. So, the doctors get in there and they're like, if they can't get you up to some acceptable height and weight to get that happen, all right, well, here's the thing. You love football, right? Yeah, totally love football stuff. Okay, so what if I told you this? You will not be a player. You can play with your buddies and stuff. Maybe you can start a shorter league. Who knows? But in the meantime, you can work for a team somewhere and be a vital part of how you could be a coach, defensive coach. You could be anything. You could take care of the game and be involved. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay, so you didn't quite get exactly what you wanted, but you know what? You might actually end up in your 50s without broken knees and broken backs and all this other stuff, which hopefully Beverly Crusher will exist in 2100 to heal all of our bones. But you get your dreams somehow. Or because education is so prolific, you don't just have one dream. You got 100 dreams. And you know that in your lifetime, you won't get them all. So one falls short. The next one down's pretty good. We can manage our lives this way today. It's just a little tougher, right? People always ask you, what do you want your life to be like in a year, 5 years, 10 years? And I've heard people, I was at a restaurant the other day, and I heard someone talking to someone else, and they were really, really happy. I don't know what happened to their life, but what I heard them say to the other person was, what changed my life? And the other person goes, what? And he said, when so-and-so asked me where I want to be 1, 5, and 10 years from now. And I had never considered that answer. And when I did, I realized I need to make profound changes in my life. And they did. And obviously I was staring at them within the first year being much happier in life. I'm going to repeat something here because I got a little more room on my stick. This episode's going to be dreadfully long. But when I did my episode on money, especially fiat currency, I suggested that banking be removed from the private sector because it is such a vital system of our life that no one should be allowed to create a private for-profit bank that can just make up fees and make up all kinds of weird contingencies. Like what is it? You bounce your balance could bounce $14, and you'll have $40 worth of charges for that one bounce. That should be just a federal penalty. It should be a felony against a bank to do such a thing. You can't penalize someone more than the amount that they owe you for the bounce, even if you cover the debt. You just can't make it up. But anyway, one of the scenarios I gave, and I just spoke about this today, as I said that, we do need to want to clean up the government, clean up all the swampy scumbags that serve kings and queens and bankers and all these cartels and what have you. Banking cartels mainly. And bring banking back into government once we clean it up. This is an ideal situation, but give it some time here in your brain. But let's just say, I'll use myself as an example. I've talked about this direct LED 3D theater that I worked on with my buddy Richard Taylor. All right, well, it was going to cost us several $1 million to start our company, and we had found the investor, but due to another guy being a complete liar, we couldn't get the product created reliably. And so, but let's just say we needed, my partner and I, Richard, instead of getting an investor, venture capitalist guy who brought in, a bunch of weird DNA into the company. He wasn't a part of the entertainment industry at all. So he really tried, but he even told us, he goes, look, I want to be out of this thing as soon as possible. I want to turn it over to other folks because this is not my game. And I got a new little girl and I want to spend my life with her. And it's a great priority set. Had we been able to go to this bank and say, look, we need X amount of dollars to make this happen. This is a foregone conclusion. Movie theaters are going to go from projection to LED. It's just going to take place. And they said, okay, this is great. We love it. And you're going to make this an American business. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, how much do you need? Boom, boom, boom. But we're going to need a lot of help. We need a CFO. We need various big heads to take over. We may even need to get a CEO at some point so he and I can come down off the top floor and make sure the technology works. Maybe certain specialists in various areas, right? The bank, if they treated it like an investment capital situation, they would simply find those individuals who also are looking for work in that area and build the best possible team in the world to help us out. And then kaboom, the business happens with the best possible chance of American citizen DNA. They could be from other countries, but they're here and they get the benefits of being involved in the project because they're brilliant. But that doesn't happen, right? What do they get as a result of loaning us the money? Maybe nothing, but maybe there's just a fee for the money. Well, we're going to loan you $10 million. What we want back from that's $250,000. It's a tiny fee for you to borrow the money from us. Maybe personal loans are managed different than business loans, right? Personal loans, it's really on the person to make it work. It's a high-risk situation, perhaps. With the business loan, maybe not so high risk. But no matter what, if you went as an individual, they should be there to help you out. So when you see these situations in your head where you're like, yeah, man, if we could just clean things up, we get this amazing world. Oh my God, we have so many examples of that exact sort of thing in our personal lives, right? If I just clean up my house, then I wouldn't have this anxiety that is so dirty. If I just hunker down and study in school, I get good grades. If I get good grades, I get a great degree, and then I can go off and get a great job. But again, we're so screwed up in our priorities overall, right? So anyway, I think you feel me on that. I just wanted to throw that out there. Let me know what you think. I do get quite a few comments lately, which is sort of kind of endearing and sort of kind of frustrating at the same time, where someone will say something that I've said in the video, which must mean that they've either heard it and didn't realize they heard it from the video, and then they duplicate this profound statement, or they've said it before it happened, so it's kind of interesting. So with this particular one, hopefully you guys can get to the end. And if you make an early comment and you find out the data is actually already in the episode fully covered, you can always press edit on your comment and change it, and within a certain amount of minutes, I think, and update with better thinking and more stuff that's out there. I think that the The quality of our communication determines the value of the show. Anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. I'll make it fairly short today. There's 2 video, 2 audio, 3 social media, 2 ways to donate, 2 products I recommend you get. There's no money generated from that stuff, regardless of there being an affiliate program. There is a store with some new shirts in it, which is hopefully cool to you guys. I will be creating more. And there's an all-new remastered Season 1, so make sure you get over there and get subscribed to get the first 100-plus episodes. Just subscribe until you see them all and then unsubscribe. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.